Alrighty, good morning. Good morning, folks. Engaging with our clients, so it's becoming increasingly important. But the bit that's not clear is actually how to do that effectively. And that's where our esteemed speakers come in today, having built a world-class program, award-winning in some respects. So without further ado, we have Philip McGowan, who I've been told is the only red-headed speaker on our program today. I was told to introduce that, as well as Sadie Barron at Reed Smith. So I'll hand over to you both to introduce yourselves.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So maybe the accent will give it away, but I actually am based in London. That's okay? Can you hear me okay? So we're going to talk to you a little bit today about achieving a world-class digital presence. But before we get going, I joined Reed Smith 10 years ago. I was appointed CMO 7.5 years ago. And it has been one hell of a roller coaster of a ride, which I'm sure many of you in those roles will identify with. But one of the reasons that I'm so lucky is because of this man on my left, and a few in the audience, by the way, as well, who I've been very lucky enough to work with. And Phil is an outstanding member of my team, and he's done all the heavy lifting on this. I really am a passenger for this presentation, so thank you, Phil, for doing that. Okay, shall we get going and talk about it? So Passle wanted us to talk about building a world-class digital, but I'm not very good at doing what I'm told, as most of you will know. So actually what we want to talk about is how we build content that's greater than the website. And this, for us, is all about how we facilitate the B2B journey to drive revenue. So, we have the next one. So, yeah, I'm CMO, and that's Phil. But what I just want to also say is that Phil is actually my corporate communications director, but where we're now traveling towards is how corporate communications and digital actually is business development. And I think we sometimes lose sight of that. So actually, when I think about Phil these days, Phil is facilitating our business development journey every single day. And that, to me, I think, is something that we need to keep in mind as we go through a digital strategy. Why are we all doing this? Why are we all here? What are we doing every day? Well, we're all here to drive revenue and build our brand and our reputations. So where did we start? Well, back in 2017, we launched a website, which was different and was a real rush job. I think it was 9 months. Six months. 6 months build. Okay, piece of advice, don't ever try that, because it doesn't go very well, if I'm honest with you. It was adequate, it was refreshed, but it didn't do the job we needed it to do. And we knew we could do so much more. Come next one. In 2019, we started advocating for a new website. But again, most of you in CMO roles will know, securing a 7-figure investment takes some time. But we did know what we wanted to do. We spent that time wisely, really building up to understanding when we did press the button on a new website, and we're right in the middle of it right now, and many of our partners who are helping us are in the room today. We knew what we wanted to get. We knew where we wanted to go. We knew what the journey was going to be. So where are we right now? Well, we're in the wireframe stage, which I'm told is one of the least exciting parts of a website project. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand you over to Phil, who's going to actually do a lot more on this.
Thank you, Sadie. Good morning, everybody. And yes, I am the non-affiliated ginger in the room. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my history. So I came from newspapers before I went to government, before I came to legal. But let's talk about newspapers. So I started my career in 1999, Baltimore Sun, Pulitzer Prize winning paper. Daily circulation of 300,000, 500,000 on Sundays. Profit margins north of 30%, 35%. Some metro newspapers were at 40% profit margins. You're all aware of the crash. And I think what it come down to is essentially this. We didn't meet the customers where they were. We were in the knowledge game, and for so many reasons, so many papers have failed. I mean, there's still a few good ones out there. But essentially, it's just that what they did not understand at the time was that data was going to become more plentiful, that there was going to become more access to the data, that everybody had phones, which was going to create behavioral change irrevocably forever. And that essentially, that also breeded choice. So I have more choice to do more things at more times, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in the presentation. And then also the targeting aspects. So there's more data to get more things, but then starting with Google search and other methods and social, and then we're going to go to AI, that essentially is that there's this giant universe of stuff, and I can just pull out what I need to. Newspapers didn't understand that. They didn't meet the customers where they were. And there are, we're going to get the data piece right now, so I can't tell you what a zettabyte is, but I can tell you that if each gigabyte was a meter, that a zettabyte would be the length of the Amazon River. And so this doesn't even factor in AI, folks. This is just a projection for 25. It's pretty close to what the projections sort of still are, but sort of a mammoth sort of growth that way. And then now you've got companies that are creating more of the data. So for years, it was user-generated content. And now companies understand, because there are fewer media organizations and there's a need to take hold of the brand in a different way and talk about its purpose, that essentially is that companies, enterprises of all types, are getting in the game and they're taking the lead on creating the data that is in the world. So expectations. So, I mean, I could go off on like 20 different types of sort of customer journeys, what have you. I'll just take streaming services. I've subscribed to 4 of these services. I don't know how many of you subscribe to which ones. And there's others on top of this. But the idea is that there's content that is segmented. It's in more places. I have access to it on my phone, on my tablet, on televisions, and I can access it literally any place in the world, anywhere I want, whenever I want. I always loved the Domino's Pizza Tracker. And there were some rumors that that somehow, like the Domino's Pizza Tracker, it doesn't work, but it's actually patented. So if you go to their website, there's a little patent number associated with it. But I always liked the tracker because I know that by the time that I got the 3 on the tracker, I knew that I needed to get in my car and go and pick up the pizza, and it would be there for me. And again, this is the expectation for how everybody is consuming information and what their what their service expectations are. More and more finite. So then when I go from newspapers and think about like all the ways that they failed in going from publishing a once-a-day newspaper to then trying slowly moving to a website, but still sticking with the newspaper and thinking that people who were going to read a once-a-day paper, that was going to suffice in a digital information world. Now think about legal. So we have all this choice, we have all this data, and we think that reputation matters as much as it did, and it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter as much because essentially I can get what I want where I want. So this is also applying to legal. This is a theory of mine. Like you see this number from Thomson Reuters, and you see that reputation is down. Now that's a relative thing. I'm talking to people in the room who all represent law firms who all have sort of relative reputation. But essentially is that it matters less and less. Brand loyalty. So if you didn't get the chance, and I don't know Matt Dixon well, just connected with him a few weeks ago. Great podcast on Passle from Matt Dixon at DCI or DCM Insights. And so he talks about this Harvard Business Review article, which in the middle of it says brand loyalty. You can do great work for clients, and the trend line is they're not going to come back to you that's not the indicator. There are other things that are getting into it. And as you think about, again, there's more choice and access to data, and I've got more bright, shiny objects. That essentially is that, well, I can play the field. I can play the field whenever I want, for any reason or for no reason at all. So you got this big crash. And maybe all of you are feeling that sort of sometimes. Like, okay, so all of this stuff is out in the universe, and how do I essentially navigate that? How do I do the best for our firm and our lawyers with all of this data that's kind of out in the world? Well, okay, here's one thing. People don't read anymore. And I know it's funny, I'm putting a slide up that you're reading right now that people don't read. But the idea is that people don't actually read. And there's really good data out there if you go get it. So essentially it's that people are either collecting multiple sets of information, or they're finding the one thing that they need, and then they get out. I don't think any of what I'm saying right now is a foreign concept to any of you. 70% of web journeys start at Google. Why? Because you're looking for one thing. And if you don't immediately find it, you're going to type in a sentence. And if you don't like that, you're going to type in up to a whole paragraph to get the thing that you are looking for, because you think that there's one thing that's out there. So that's how people are searching for information. Only 2% are actually exploring, like they're surfing the web. And then there's 2% that are monitoring. So if I see an update on CNN and I want to go back to it, I might monitor to sort of go back to it. But again, not very many people are actually like digging in and reading a bunch of information. So I included this slide in part because, yes, Kevin Bacon is always with us, wherever and whenever. So this is from A Few Good Men, and really great sort of back and forth. You don't see Jack Nicholson sort of engaging with Tom Cruise here. And it's like, it's a great dramatic scene, and if you're in the context of watching a movie, you're like all in on it. But when you break it down, it's like, I don't blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. I ordered the code red. Right? That's the only thing that matters. And essentially is that how much do the lawyers actually get that the blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah actually doesn't count for anything. So what are we trying to do with our content and sort of thinking about this? Again, this is not rocket science in a certain way. So essentially, we're thinking about how can we ride the news wave and the social wave? Because that's going to kind of carry us out and give us legitimacy out in the world. How are we leveraging SEO? And then AI, because essentially with AI, I can avoid all of the ads. I can go to search, and I don't have to be peppered with sort of sponsored content, recommended other things. I can just get the answer that I want. Again, that's the trend line. I just want one thing, and I can get that. And so what is that? So again, I would say the behaviors that sort of drive and sort of the point of view for law firms regarding content. It's the personalize, it's a segment, it's a specialize, it's simplify. And we're going to come back to this, but about the purpose. What is the purpose of what you are trying to do? How does that line up to with your strategy? What brand are you trying to build that way? And also, as Sadie noted earlier, how is that advancing the B2B buyer journey? How is that advancing on the sales funnel? How does that lead to a conversion? So obviously, law firms have, their businesses are built a little bit differently than newspapers. But essentially, I think the message is still the same about meeting people where they are. I alluded to this earlier about reputation, and I wanted to get a little bit more into this now. So again, this is from Thomson Reuters. So I don't usually read from the slide. Most useful drivers to stay top of mind with buyers of legal service. So contact is by far and away the most effective. But probably many of you have seen this before in a certain way. It's 3-to-1 over any other indicator. I mean, again, reputation, you see that, it's the 5th indicator. So you talk to your lawyers and like, okay, I want awards and submissions, I want chambers rankings, I want this or that. And yes, it matters in a certain way to a certain degree in some settings. But in the grand scheme of things, reputation does not matter, particularly if you're in the room, if you're competing against other law firms who are just like you and you're not really differentiated. Because if you're not really differentiated, then reputation basically that's on a sliding scale down. So as we're thinking about our content, I think our point of view is we're not just creating it for the sake of doing this. We want to use the content that we have to arm our lawyers to go engage with the clients. And there's all kinds of good information for which I do not need to elaborate in this room about how clients' behaviors have changed since the pandemic. You know, they're not going off site, they're not staying after work, more of them are working from home. It is harder to get their time and attention, it's harder to get them in person. So how do you create the contact to essentially to give yourself the best opportunity to go and get new work and grow your business? And we think content is a way to do that. And it's not just simply about creating more, but it's also about actually dialing it back in a certain way and finding sort of that right place where you can make those connections.
Thanks, Phil. So it's easy, right? Got it. We're going to produce less. We're going to meet our clients where they want us to be. It's not. And there's no magic formula for this, but what I think we've worked out is it's a real evolution of a strategy. Can I have the next slide? So, you know, repeat after me, segmentation. That is absolutely critical and key as you move forward. And I would say again, if you take one thing away from today, is the importance of understanding that. And I don't know about the rest of you, but we are drowning in data. It's a really hard thing to do well, to really understand where your clients are and how you want to meet them. So this is just to kind of show you what we've done and maybe give you a little bit of food for thought. I'm sure many of you are already doing much of this and possibly even better than we are, because we know we've far from finished. It is genuinely an evolution. But back in 2019, these are the methods that we had to drive traffic to reedsmith.com, a website that wasn't great. Still isn't, will be. You know, traditional PR, of course. Phil and the team do a fantastic job. And we've made progress in all of these areas. We've had phenomenal results in terms of our media strategy, our social strategy, how we aggregate content, how we work with platforms like Lexblog, social media, obviously, webinars, and video. And I think we all felt the effect of the pandemic when we literally turned ourselves overnight into an online marketing function. Can I have the next slide? But where are we now? So we've added some new channels, podcasts. I'm very, very proud of our podcasts. We started them in 2020, and we're up to 15?
A little less than that.
A little
yes.
less, 30. Whatever, I'm in marketing, I make it up. He doesn't, I do. Quick little story on Passle. I'm really proud that Passle is on this slide, but oh my goodness, how close would it have been if not? I think I told Phil to sign the contract on like a Monday. On Wednesday, I got the phone call from the CFO, don't spend any more money on anything. Oops, too late. But it was a really fantastic pilot that we did. That proof of concept was amazing. We had, I think, 13 contributors, and it increased our traffic to the website exponentially in a matter of just a few months. We have a campaigns function, and I think Phil's going to talk a little bit more about this, but again, I'm very proud of my campaigns function. That's a very glamorous way of describing two members of my team. But they are, I think Chris mentioned the Alex Partners dinner last night with Novicel, that we were, they call them signature campaigns. They're like firm-wide major campaigns. And I think the observation I have about campaigns is they're really difficult to do. I have a little side anecdote that a competitor firm, CMO, rang me after our first one and basically asked me how the hell I'd done it. And I said, it's really easy, you just bully the partners, literally, so within an inch of their lives to produce content, but we'll get into that a bit more. And then digital marketing in 2022 has been kind of the latest thing that we do. And it's all about, as I've already mentioned, driving traffic to Reed Smith to make those micro conversions to build and generate revenue in the firm. And all of these do that. So, Phil, do you want to carry on our journey?
Absolutely. So, I mean, a key part of our content strategy, and I'm sure that this is the case for others, is that we're trying to catch them anywhere on the spokes of the wheel, and then we're trying to bring them to the site, bring them specifically to the lawyer bios. That is the commodity. That's almost half of our site traffic. And we'll just kind of discuss that a little bit sort of later that way. So second rule of thumb. So it's great that you create content, but again, like what's a general rule in marketing? Don't tell me that you have a bunch of power tools on the wall and say, I'm trying to sell you power tools. What they want, what clients want is, I need a hole drilled. I don't need to go buy the drill. I just need you to go and do the thing for me. Give me the solution, right? So what we want to do is for our practices that really matter to the business and the topics that really matter to the business, we want to own those because that gets us closer to articulating that we can own the solution. And then it becomes synonymous. It's less about some no-name practice that you can find on a website, because by the way, that's where B2B content dies, capability pages. Nobody goes there. Less than 5% of our site. Many other places are like under 2%. Nobody goes there. So this is a way of bringing people in on an engaged basis, and essentially the idea around this is helping is selling. So what are the characteristics that go into that? I've already talked about this a little bit. When you do a campaign, and sometimes it's 3, 4, 5, 6 months to sort of rally to put together, and we're trying to diversify the types of content that we're doing. It's not all like long articles with takeaways. We've done a few with Passle, where essentially we organize like 12 or 13 or 14 posts around a subject like carbon conscious, and then essentially we'll go to market all at one time and then social media market over the next month. So there's different ways to do it. We try to bring all the tactics together. So essentially is that if a practice or an industry group commits to a big campaign, we say, okay, well, people have to update their web bios, and they have to update their LinkedIn profiles, and they actually have to promote the stuff that they actually wrote. How about that? Yeah. And then essentially they also have to commit money to digital advertising. And it's not a ton. We're talking about like $2,500. 4 weeks after, once you've gotten all the sort of the traction through Google and it's out in the space, the content has been shared, you got lots of sort of, merit sort of based, positives, then you get to the digital advertising piece, which can then run to like the next 4 to 6 weeks on Google Ads and LinkedIn advertising. So KPIs, and I'll get into this in a second a certain way because we're bringing in business, but like one sort of KPI that we look at is what is the uplift of a campaign on web traffic from bio and capability pages. And so we look at like 3 months before a campaign and then 3 months after, and like where did we end up? And so for our campaigns in 2023, we did 12 of them. We were 67% uplift on lawyer bios who wrote articles, and then a 28% uplift on capabilities pages. There's many other ways to slice and dice and come up with KPIs, but that's kind of one measure for us, like are we advancing people down the funnel? So this was, and Sadie talked about this is our first, we've done other campaigns before this, but this is 2022. This is the first one with the campaigns team. And so this is at a point where how do you use drones and other sort of small sort of aircraft to move e-commerce from, airports and ports, and how do you get that all the way down to an individual person? So we were first to market on this in a certain way. This is from our industry-leading transportation group. And so we generated, the chair of the practice was very forthcoming in saying, here are the new clients that have come in, because not every lawyer is forthcoming about what they actually got from a campaign. But he was very forthcoming with us and said, like, this is the business that I think that we're getting, 4 to 5 million. And he could say, like, here are the clients that come in, here are the matters, and I can project it out. The real success for us in a certain way is that we were in year 2. They were in 2023, middle of 2023. This is 18 months after we launched the campaign, and we're getting 1,500 page views a week to the report. And we have an associated sort of PDF version of it, and we're getting a 6% click-through on that. And so we knew that we had created something that was sort of enduring sort of beyond a particular moment. So again, this is not about necessarily creating more content. It's more about the streams of your content. I have talked about campaigns, but let's get into sort of other aspects. So I'm going to deconstruct this slide because this is kind of the most complicated one. The blue bars at the bottom, that is all of our content. Client alerts, blog posts, webinars, podcasts, campaigns. Now, campaigns didn't start technically until 2022, so our campaigns figures sort of go into those bars. But obviously, with the pandemic, we did 650 client alerts in 2020. Yeah. And then we have then since backed off. We brought on Passle. We've done podcasting. So we've come up and we've come down. We've also diversified the platforms, as Sadie sort of pointed to earlier. Let me give you sort of the two other lines. So the red line is our PR number. So what you will see is that we doubled the number of placements. We went up 102% from 2019 to 2022, and then we fell just back in 23, but we also increased from 22 to 23 the number of placements. I think we went up 200% that year in the number of placements in national publications. So what we're doing is that we're very much focused more on the quality piece than the quantity piece. We're not just trying to hit the legal trades. We're not just trying to hit Law 360. So, but PR for us is a measure of our content success, because it shouldn't just be a reactive thing like, oh, I put out a client alert, and then 3 days later, like, oh, let's go and let's put together some talking points, let's go to the agency. It's a little bit more hand in glove now. Our campaigns have been a big boost for us with our PR numbers, and then also kind of our Passle post, campaigns as well, because again, sort of we can plan and prepare, and we can get the machine ready to go out. And if it's on topics that matter in the news cycle, well, then we get greater resonance. So I'm just going to say that we're probably an outlier in this room, but this gives you a sense about what I personally believe, and I believe Sadie and the business believes, about segmentation. So we go and we have more content, now we've kind of come down, but how are we delivering that out to clients? So not all 58 are held by marketing. There are some for recruiting and pro bono and DEI, but we're about 40 channels that are owned by marketing. And many of them are actually owned by our BDs. So they're the ones who are actually creating the content to get out. They work with the comms group on templating, messaging approach. They understand that please do not, when you're promoting chambers, don't link to chambers, because I will call them up and say, take down the post and start again. You have to bring it back to the website. Understanding that not anyone is going to click on it, right? But we want to get people back to the website, and we are scrupulous about that. And I would just, that's what you have to be. Don't send people off to other places, because you may never get them back ever again. That's how you have to treat it. So anyway, we believe that in a certain way that people who are interested in private equity are not interested in insurance recovery. They're not interested necessarily in IP. They're not necessarily interested in appellate. They're not necessarily interested in other things. They're interested in the thing that they want to subscribe to. That is the whole point of it. So if people want to subscribe to multiple things, here you go. We got 23 showcase pages. And then, now obviously you can subscribe to multiple different channels. So I've done the math, and we're at 107,000. So I could say, do we have 100,000 unique followers? I don't actually know. But I know that we have 107,000 people who subscribe to all of this content. And again, the diversification is really important, because we want to eliminate the noise and make it really effective for clients to get what they want when they need it. And again, so we're trying to create the contact. We're trying to do it effectively. and we believe that helping is selling, and the way that we roll out in our content and we don't try to force feed it on people is a way by which we do that. Sadie, back to you.
Thank you. So, it's an endless job. It never stops. And it is relentless and it's ever changing. And we're constantly asking ourselves that question, what are the next content needs? Have the next slide. So I already mentioned our website project, and I think this is probably a good opportunity to say, so everything that you've heard, all that great, amazing work that Phil and the team do every single day is informing us of how we want to rebuild our website. How are we going to be very intentional about the design and make it content-centric to advance that B2B journey? Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to try and explain composable architecture. But the person to really speak to is at the back of the room, who's Mikkel from Novacell, or Chris from Alex Partners. Put your hand up, Chris. Okay, because these guys have actually done it. And I'm going to just share very quickly, because I know we're getting close on time, but it was at the Passle CMO event in London that I heard them speak about what they were doing with their website, and a light bulb went on in my head. And I came straight back, and I think I sent an email, possibly even from the event, to Rebecca and Phil, and went, we have to investigate this headless approach for our website. I don't even know what it means yet, but we need to get into this quickly. Now, Phil has an analogy, which I'm going to try and explain, because I think it's a really good one about how we're going to build the website and how it's going to be different. So if you put air conditioning in your house, and you have one unit and one control, that's like a traditional website. So if you put an extension onto your house, it's really difficult to add extra units in. You have to probably put something else on, you have to bolt it in, you have to wire it, it maybe doesn't work, it blows the system, and eventually maybe to make it happen, it's really difficult each and every time. What we're talking about is effectively zoned air conditioning. And if we build an extension, it's really easy to plug in what we want. Or if we're not there, because we've moved to, I don't know, Dubai for the winter, we can turn it off in one room, but keep it on in another room because that's where the pet rabbit lives. It's about having flexibility in your build system. It's not about it being a traditional model. So I'm really excited about it. I've probably done a really bad job of explaining that, and do go and spend some time with Novacell. But what we're trying to build is something that's going to grow with us as a firm. I had the joy of standing up at our partner retreat and explaining our website project to the 700 partners in the room. And what I said to them was, the website that we're going to launch next year will not be the website that you have in 2028 or even 3032. It's going to be completely different because it's constantly going to evolve, and we're building it in a way that's enabling us to do that. So I don't have to basically start again each and every time. I've already labored this point, but it's going to be content-centric, and it's going to be news-orientated. We're going to put a lot more emphasis on paid content and case studies. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention the A word, AI search, which I'm super excited about. I don't know how many of you guys get those phone calls or those emails about how terrible the search is on your website. Mine is almost daily. And they all want Google, don't they? They basically want you to put Google into your website. And I often say, well, I think Google have probably invested, I don't know how many billions in their search. And last time I looked, that wasn't my budget. But the point is, actually, I think we're getting closer and closer to having that experience, and it's not far away. And again, I think you can go and have a look at EY's website, because I think that's a really good demonstration of it. So that's where we're heading. That's what we're trying to do. Thanks, Phil.
Home stretch time. So we've explained a lot about if you don't have $2 million to build a new website at a particular moment in time, that maybe you have some tactics and things to think about and consider with your content. But again, the job is never done, and so this is within the context of a website, whether you have one now that you're going to keep, that you're trying to build, or you're going to build it from scratch. And so, one thing that Reed Smith, we do a lot of things pretty well. One thing that we need to do better is video for thought leadership. So we do video pretty well for marketing events, but not for the thought leadership. And so now we're creating pop-up studios. So our largest office, if you did not know, is actually in London. We have 1,000 lawyers in the United States, but our largest office is in London. So we're starting there. We purchased a few $1,000s of equipment, and we're going to just try it, because that's what you do in digital marketing. You just experiment and you figure it out. And we're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. So we're going to go there. We're going to sort it out. We're going to go to New York. We're going to go to Pittsburgh. We'll go to other markets. But essentially, we want to create an environment where it's easier to get the lawyers sort of engaged on this and ride the news cycle. The thing on the right is that this is particularly important with the site that we are building, is that tagging is going to be more important than ever with internal search, and that things have to load up a certain way. And so that puts more of an emphasis on tagging. And we use an SEO platform, and we rely on business developers in part, mostly with tracking our 1,400 so keywords. But we need more dedicated SEO analysts to help with that tagging bit. And at a certain point, I think all of you are going to have to deal with that as well. So this is the last slide, and this is around the notion that, yes, newsrooms are a trouble place to be if you're working there, but there's some good that comes out of working in newsrooms because they know what they're doing with content. So let's look at the left. So partners, individual partners say, I want to write a client alert. Okay, fine. So they go and they rally a bunch of lawyers, they put out the client alert, they write a 200-character headline with no takeaways. It's 1,500 words, and they send it out after 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. This has literally happened, folks.
Before holiday, yeah.
Okay, and they're like, I don't know what your problem is, why we aren't going to publish this right now. Let's go. The lawyers get to dictate editorial governance. That affects brand. That affects our connection with clients. Some of them probably think that we're ridiculous. Like, you're going to send me an 1,800-word client alert with the takeaways at the bottom, and I'm about to go out on leave on vacation, and you want me to read this on my phone? Okay, so that's not happening. So we have to move to a place with the digital newsroom, and there are probably some people in this room who have progressed this more than we have. We've begun this effort, but essentially is that we've got to be able to standardize the approach on what is the content funnel, who's going to handle that content, who's going to edit it, who's going to brand it, who's going to make sure that it's SEO optimized, and then we're going to get that out the door. And we're going to do it the same way every single time. And it's not the lawyers who control the content funnel. It has to be the marketing folks who actually know what they're doing and are actually acting in the best interests of the lawyers. So that's a bunch of change management there. But essentially is that if you're going to invest this much in content, you can't short shrift it and leave it to the lawyers to think that they can do the best job, because they're not. Folks, that's the presentation.
Thank you.
We'll do a few minutes for Q&A. We've got a few mics, so if anyone wants to ask Phil or Sadie any questions, we do have a few hands raised up there. So if you can give your name and the firm that you're with and ask away.
Nice job, Phil. Very smart, very, very cool. Oh, I'm Suzanne Donnells. I'm with Davies in Toronto, and Phil and I used to work together at General Block. So you're very lucky to have him on your team. Yeah. Hey, I was wondering, are you thinking about using AI to come up with some of that SEO keywords that might help you limit the need for a bunch of analysts to do your SEO?
Want me to take that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I guess my view is that we have an SEO platform, and we're getting kind of real-time data from Google. So I think that I'm going to rely on the SEO platform sort of around that at this moment. That's kind of where my bias is, because we've made that investment. I think as the AI is able to capture information that is in real time, as opposed to maybe 6 months, a year, 18 months ago, then I think that I would be more attuned to wanting to make that leap to do that. But it's all like, If it's not processing information in real time on the news cycle, then I feel like if you do that, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Got it. Excellent.
Thank you. Oh yeah.
You knew it was coming,
I knew.
Sadie. John Brewer from Oric. So you're driving content, you're driving traffic to your website now. You've got this great content. What are you doing? And I know that Passle delivers you some great data in terms of who's looking at what content. How do you empower your team to follow up with that data to qualify leads and turn them into opportunities?
Shall I start? And then
Go ahead and start. Yes, please.
then you can correct me. So one of the big things that I think is really important in our function is demonstrating ROI and tangible value. So as we get the data, we do a quarterly report, and in it, it's broken down by every practice and industry group, and also something we call diagonals, which is cross-industry, cross-practice initiatives like ESG. And so we'll take that data, and then I have an expectation that the lead business developer will sit down with the attorneys involved and discuss what's going on. The second stage of that is now what we call the ROI report. So anything that we're doing that's got a significant investment attached to it, we're then tracking at the 3-month point, the 6-month point, 9 months, 12 months out. Now that's only just started, so I've only just got the first report going, but that's where we're tracking the leads. I don't think it's easy to do, John, to connect those dots. We were talking about this last night about, where does a piece of work come from? And what we're doing often is complementing that process. But was it because they read that campaign report? And sometimes they'll tell you, yes, it is. Other times it's at the end of a really long process of those golf trips and 7 events in Vegas. And you all get it, you all know what that is. So anything you'd add, Phil?
I'll just speak specifically to Passle. And I think that I will just say that that is one of the great opportunities. So what do I mean by that? What are the dynamics in BD right now? I think we have lots of law firms that have people that are vacancies. And so there's more turnover on the BD side. And we rely on our BDs to basically go into the analytics on the back end and say, guess what? We've got 550 subscribers and they're all warm leads. Will you please go after them right now? And I think in part because of turnover and training and other things and the focus on pitches and other activities the lawyers want, we're not focusing enough on the warm leads that are right in front of our faces. And I had a BD director like 2 weeks ago who said like, wow, like we can go and engage all these people. So we do it on the margins, but we don't do it well enough.
Yeah, it's definitely work in progress.
Hi, Leah Schloss, Alan Matkins. I'm still trying to recover from the fact that you manage 58 social channels. That is crazy. I'm just wondering how you generate the content you need and also what metrics you use to determine that it was better to go that direction rather than having the content on a primary channel and then doing sponsored posts that are more segmented, targeted. It just seems like a lot to manage to me, but help me understand.
Right. So we're an outlier. So we have 1,600 lawyers and 31 offices on 3 continents. So we have a base of knowledge and information for which allows us to go out with more channels. So essentially, like if you're a boutique and you only stand for 3 things, then maybe you should only have like 3 or 4 channels. But I think for us, because we have so many different practice capabilities and there's an appetite to reach and engage certain sets of followers. I mean, one of the slides that I had, essentially like, I think there's one for Germany, it's got 600 followers. Everything's written in German, but that works for that group and there's activity there. So what I would say is like, you have to prune like every year and decide like, okay, so we no longer really do cannabis and we had more of a presence with LinkedIn with the showcase page. We've pruned that. We've gotten rid of that because it just doesn't make sense. Same thing with blogs and podcasts. Like we cut 4 podcasts last year because it was just like, it's been 6 months. Let's go, people. If you're not going to do this, it's time to move on. You know, it's not a legacy thing. So I think it's kind of active, like, are you moving on followers? Are you moving on engagement? Another thing that we don't do enough is crowdsource. And we're trying to build that sensibility that it's okay for the lawyers to go back to their clients and say, hey, you're subscribed here or there or somewhere else. Are you actually getting what you need? But I think the most important thing is around the helping and selling aspect is stay away from the self-promotional garbage because they literally don't care about that. None of it. And that's a fight every day.
Every day.
I'm afraid we're going to have to call it the end of this session. I've got plenty more questions, and hopefully Phil and Sadie will be around to answer them throughout the day. But if we could wrap it up now, thank you very much, Phil and Sadie. It was wonderful.